Oh, I'm gonna keep it a buck. My experience with gacha games haven't been like a wide variety of a history. To be honest, there's not really much I can really say outside the fact of maybe like, I don't know, Kingdom Hearts Union Cross, which that game is not that great, to be honest. The lore is amazing, but the gameplay itself is not that great. So suffice to say, when Genshin came out back in 2020, yeah, it was the first real gacha experience I ever had, and to keep this a stack, it was amazing, and it still is amazing. A prime time and a prime example of how the hell a game could actually be, how fun it can actually get to, the levels of what it is, and all that sort of jazz. And as time has gone on, we have gotten more gacha games to come out, like a Honkai Star Rail, a Zenless Zone Zero, and even a Wuthering Waves. And I mostly play these games on the PlayStation. I don't really play them on the go at all because I don't have any sort of way of doing that. That's just how it is. But when it comes down to it though, as I was kind of just playing these games, mainly Genshin, and mainly kind of just experiencing what the game has to offer, I slowly started to realize, man, these games are great, but why does it feel like they're always missing something? Right? And maybe it's just me, but that's just kind of what I've been sensing about for a good little minute. And I even saw a video where Moran Online was talking about, or at least was reacting to a video where somebody kind of just gives up playing Genshin and kind of go over the problems that they had with the game. And one element of that was the quality of life features, or at least how the devs went about it and how they keep trying to get you to play the game. That hopefully, maybe one of these days, that very same quality of life feature that you're complaining about would hopefully get added. Essentially like, oh, artifact loadouts, a skip button, or, you know, maybe like a trading system to maybe trade different items with different players, or something of the sort like that. Basically, the things of the feedback that we are very much, you know, asking for and looking for, and ultimately they don't really get put into the game, and if they do, it's so many years later into the gameplay experience, which is a bit sad and honestly quite a bit annoying if we're going to be real. How many times have people asked for old replayable events? How many times have people asked for, you know, talent material on every single day to go just farm those things? That's literally how it is. Don't get me wrong, some of the quality of life features is great, you know, like getting a re-roll on some of your artifacts if it's at level 20, that's nice. But also at the very same time, it's just taken so dang long, and that's just kind of one of the problems that I've noticed. It's just that a lot of the time when it comes down to these games, they kind of feel like they give you what you want to see and want to play, but then they just leave other aspects of their style of game kind of out. And I don't really understand why. Well, actually, I would say that, but it's money. But at the end of the day, it's just very frustrating to kind of deal with. Like, for example, Genshin is amazing when it comes down to its story, and personally, it's one of the better stories I've seen, and I really care for. However, not every part of that gameplay is nice to just straight up play. Honestly, why do you need a timer in every single like challenge mode ever? I don't really understand why. Why do you need like always to buff HP and not really give enemies different animations of attacking? You know, I get why, because it's a little bit of a challenge, but at the same time, you could still provide and do that, and I don't really understand why that's the case. Suffice to say, there's other games that you could absolutely play that is having a better gameplay experience in terms of fighting than what Genshin can honestly provide. And again, that's why most people, at times, play for its story. Then you get something like Star Rail, which has a very nice tone to the story where everything feels like you should take this serious with the characters and everything like that. And at the very same time, the turn-based gameplay is not also bad. It's actually very good. However, one reason why I stopped playing Star Rail is because it feels like everybody has a stick up their ass. And I'm not gonna lie, this is just with me in turn-based in general. It just feels like every single time you click an option for dialogue, it doesn't really feel like it matters. It doesn't really feel like you have too much of a choice. I know people clown on Genshin for not having a choice, but when it comes down to it though, at least you have like a different way of how you fight these sort of battles, and it can kind of go a different way depending on how the battle can go at different levels and times. It's not often where that happens, but it can happen. But also at the very same time, when you get something like, you know, Star Rail, you gotta fight that thing the way it has to be fought, and that's just kind of how it is. And then the story sometimes take itself super serious to the point if you try to crack a joke as your main character, then literally everybody looks at you weird, or they don't really understand the joke that you're trying to tell, which feels like a giant stick up the ass considering when they start telling jokes that's not really all that funny, it ends up just being like a what are we talking about sort of situation, yet everybody in the story thinks it's the funniest shit in the world. And it's easily one of the reasons why I don't care for Star Rail anymore, right? The dialogue just doesn't hit for me, and that's just a big huge main thing when you're trying to sell me on story and characters. Then you get something like ZZZ that's absolutely amazing when it comes down to its characterization of people, you know, the personalities, the vibes of the damn place. It's amazing, it's just a nice time. Even the combat to a degree is actually pretty dang fun and nice to see how it gets changed up every now and again. The issue with that is grinding for things is boring at times. I fell asleep like a few times trying to grind for stuff, and then at the same time with its story, I'm not fully 100% invested. Sure, I want to see where it goes, I guess, but if I were to give it up tomorrow versus something like a Genshin story or whatever, I'm 9 times out of 10 going to pick Genshin every single time, because outside of the characters and what crazy wacky things they could be a part of, I'm not really vibing with, you know, the story all that much, right? You created something like Fairy to be like this really powerful AI, and all it feels like is a background character that we don't really care to explore the backstory of. I don't know. It just feels a little weird to me that that kind of is taking a back seat and not really some level of importance. I don't know. Is it a Paimon thing? It could be. Who really knows? That's just how it is for me. And then something like Wuthering Waves. Boy, did 1.0 kill my enjoyment of anything of the story. I was trying to get into it. 1.0 threw out so much stuff. Terrible voice acting in the 1.0 version of things. And to keep very much a stack, it felt like they was facing this Avengers level threat with like all these tacit discords and all this other stuff. And it's just like, why do you face this so early? I don't really think we know a lot of these characters yet, or any at all. I don't certainly know half of y'all. I don't really care. That's just kind of how it was. You kept throwing a lot of story at me, but at the end of the day, I kind of just don't care. And that's one of the main reasons as to why I haven't really cared about anything until Septimont, if I'm gonna be honest. And Septimont has been the only story so far to really hold my attention to be like, okay, let's see where this actually goes. This might be cooking a little bit. But the main big thing about the reason why I still play Wuwa is because of the combat. The combat is very good for an open world game. I like that you can just, you know, parry or have the right timing to attack something. I love the fact that it's, you know, very flashy with its movements, something that Genshin desperately, I feel like, honestly, really should have. And it's just nice to see characters kind of just do whatever the hell they want to in terms of combat. It's just nice. But here's the whole ass problem with basically all of the games I've said so far. Each game has something that is very good about them. Why is that not in the case of just these games just having everything that you would ever really need? I don't really understand that. Now, obviously, I get that, you know, these companies want you to spend money on the games, spend time with these games, keep glazing these games like it's the best thing in the world. But at the end of the day, they're not really feeding the streets as they should, right? Because in one area, somebody might say rewards is not necessarily good in certain games, but they're good in another game, which you don't think that's a big priority, but it absolutely is, especially when you realize you're not really getting much from, you know, playing these games in terms of like playing them for a long period of time. I thought Genshin at one point was generous as hell. Not anymore. They're really not, especially after what ZZZ has been doing recently. And granted, it could always go away, but when it comes down to it, they've been hella generous with what they've been giving out recently. And it's just like, damn, as a person that's been playing Genshin since the first month it came out, it's rough out this hoe. It's very much rough out this hoe to get some extra free points from somewhere over here and all that sort of stuff. Also, it's very sad and very boring when the game has no events going on that you haven't played already, and essentially you're just waiting for the next event to drop. I can't tell you how many times I have been bored out of my mind ready for another event to come through, only for it to never really come through until like a few days later or so, or whatever. And it's just so boring. It sucks so much ass every single time. And as I was saying about the video I was referencing in the beginning said, they literally have all the keys to give us all the quality of life features that we are asking for and everything like that, but they just choose not to because they want you to continue to keep playing the game hoping that it will actually happen for once. Which is why plenty of people are resting their nutsacks on Nod Cry, because they're hopefully hoping for, you know, some actual quality of life changes that people has been asking for. Not one, honestly, at this point, not just one major quality of life change, but I honestly feel like 2 good quality of life changes that people have been asking for should at least keep people wanting to play the game. If they don't give out at least 2 of those things on that anniversary stream of the damn new place that we got to explore, I do feel like a fair amount of people will actually drop the game, and I don't blame them for doing so, because literally there is no reason why out of all the Hoyoverse games Genshin feels like the most far behind out of every single one of them. They don't get any sort of collaborations going, they don't get the better quality of life features that they should, even though they're the top best game that Hoyoverse still has in their back pocket. For whatever reason, they just do not give Genshin any sort of commitment of just trying to be better. I don't know if it's somebody behind the scenes that's purposely hoeing everybody, or if that person just straight up needs to be fired. I don't know, but something needs to happen when it comes to how Genshin presents itself, right? Wuthering Waves, they're very much, you know, getting their shit right. They're very much working on things to keep a level of interest up, and, you know, the quality of life, it's needs some stuff, but it's okay for what it is. It's still a new game, so I'm not gonna give it too much shit. Same thing with ZZZ. It's a new game. I'm not gonna give it too much crap when it comes down to it. But something like a Genshin, for example, that very much should already have a lot of the stuff that people have been asking for. And now with other games coming through, like Ananta and Neverness to Everness and Silver Palace and all these other games coming through, you now realize, yeah, they need to step it up, because if these games come through and they are doing something way more than what Genshin is doing, most of the people are gonna probably dip off. Even if it's, you know, they're invested to the story, they're probably gonna dip off, and I don't blame them for that. Hell, to be honest, I'm ready for an Ananta and Neverness to Everness to kind of come through so I can replace one of these gacha games that I've been playing. Probably Wuwa, even though I do like the character designs in there, still I would probably replace that so I can see what maybe one of these newer games are talking about. Also, it's just nice to see a different setting that's not a fantasy setting of a whole ass like countryside and everything like that, and an actual city, because I'm not gonna lie, a nice urban fantasy sort of setting is nice to see. Kind of reminds me of Kingdom Hearts 4, and why the hell we haven't seen that in 5,000 years outside the screenshots. That's just kind of what I've been wanting to see. I've been wanting to see something different, and I'm hoping that the quality of life when it comes to those newer games will actually already be there within the 1.0 cycle, and we don't have to worry about that later down the line. So we can look at something like Genshin and just point and laugh and be like, why the hell aren't you up there yet? What the hell is actually your problem? What's actually good here? Do you not like your freaking player base? Do you not like the game being this popular? Why is it this be the case? Why is it so? My point of what I'm trying to get at is that these games are, again, good in their own rights. They're actual good games to play, and if you haven't tried them, I would recommend that you try them. Yes, it's a gacha game, and granted, I feel like, you know, if you start throwing down money at this game in ridiculous amounts and you can't control yourself, I feel like that's a you problem than the game, honestly. Just trying to be honest, that's just me. I don't see how people get a gambling addiction. I don't get it. But when it comes down to it though, you should definitely try these games out. But the big thing that you should also be wary of is that you can realize the game could be a lot better than what it actually is. Right? I understand that different games have different teams and all that sort of stuff, but at the end of the day, there is no reason why, especially on the Hoyoverse banner, why one game has, you know, an overflow of a resin sort of option like in ZZZ or in Star Rail, but Genshin itself does not have it. right? And it's just ridiculous. There's no reason why a game like Persona 5 The Phantom X have 240 resin, I believe they have 240 resin, and while Genshin's still lacking behind 40 of that. I don't really get it. Again, there is so much to actually be changed within these games that can actually improve it to feel like a full goated experience, but they're holding themselves back just because they can. And it's really baffling and also infuriating all at the same time. I just want a game to give me an actual good experience. A game that actually is going to, sit in my mind for a long time. A game where I just feel like I can't wait to get back into. And really, that's, I guess, is one of the big reasons why single player games at the time, and when it comes down to story, is still king. And that's not a gacha, because at the end of the day, they have to give you a full experience. They have to give you, what you're looking for in that game, because if they don't, then that game is going to suffer, and they probably won't be able to make another one like that. For gacha games, they will give you infinite retries, because as long as the game's still getting support and whatever, then they'll consider what the hell's going on. But ultimately, they still try to purposely hold themselves back, and then later show you, like, what the game actually could be. So I don't know, it's just very frustrating the more you actually really sit here and think about it. There hasn't been a single gacha game, at least for me so far, that has given me a fulfilling experience in terms of combat, in terms of story, in terms of just the absolute world of everything, how it is, and how characters interact with each other, and stuff like that. There hasn't been a game like that. They've been spread around into multiple different games, but it hasn't been a single game that is just the premium of premium games of all things. And I'm hoping, again, that's unlike a Neverness to Everness, and more so in Nanta and Silver Palace, to kind of come through and absolutely kick ass in this department. Hopefully maybe kick ass in the department where Genshin can finally get their dumbasses in high gear to actually do stuff that been needed to be done. Or at least I hope Now Crowd would do that, but again, we'll have to effing see. But that is, I guess, what I really wanted to say for this one, so hopefully you did enjoy. If you did, be sure to like, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification on your way out, also on my socials, and if you'd like to donate to the channel, Kofi and Cash App is available as well. And until then, it's been Boy J, sign off. Have a blessed day.